the kind of baseline technology that the F-35 was based on came from the early 2000s. So right off the bat, you have way better computers, faster computers, computers able to process more information in a lot shorter amount of time than in previous aircraft, and computers and sensors around the aircraft that can actually communicate more with each other and provide the pilot, one source of information that they have to process, vice having to rely on multiple different sensors in the Harrier, where you had to interpret what you saw on one display or another display. Here in the F-35, it just provides it all to you on your display. So actually, my earliest memory when I was living in Tucson, Arizona, from the age of like 1 to 4, we lived across the street from the Air Force Base. So my earliest memory was Air Force jets taking off. And it was just one of those like, hey, that'd be kind of cool to do someday. Became obsessed with airplanes pretty much my entire childhood, and went to all the air shows I could, built all the airplane models and all that stuff. So I was hooked early when I saw the first plane, and have pretty much been hooked ever since.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from just flying itself, probably the best opportunities we have are going to air shows, I would say, because you have all the families and kids that get to walk around and ask us about our planes and all that. And really just kind of seeing like those 4 and 5, 6-year-old kids like that I was, it's actually a surprisingly smooth ride. The initial takeoff, when you do an afterburner takeoff or full afterburner takeoff, you get thrown back in your seat, going from about 0 miles an hour to about 300 miles an hour in a matter of 45 seconds or less. When you're taking off from an aircraft carrier and you're taking a catapult shot, you go from 0 to 125 in about 5 seconds. So that's always an initial thrill of just doing that takeoff. But then after that, it's pretty smooth just flying around. When we get into what we call air combat maneuvering, or dogfighting, as everyone knows, that's when you start pulling a lot of G's, and you really start to feel the actual performance of the aircraft. So we can pull up to 7 G's. So think of you weighing 7 times what you do now. Right now we're sitting here, we're at 1 G. As you are going faster and maneuvering the jet around, you can really it's just a function of how hard you pull back on the stick in the aircraft is how many G's you're going to pull. If you hold that for too long, you're going to pass out because all the blood's just going to rush out of your head down into your legs. So we do what is called the anti-G straining maneuver, which you're essentially tightening every muscle in your body to try and, again, preserve that blood up in the upper portion of your body. And then we also have the G suit as well. So pants essentially that we put on over our flight suit that has air bladders in it, and those will squeeze our legs to facilitate us squeezing our muscles to keep that blood up in the upper portion of our body. The F-35 can go 1.6 Mach, so 1.6 times the speed of sound, or upwards of like 1,000 miles an hour. What is it like when you break the sound barrier? And unfortunately, it is very anticlimactic because you do not feel it in the jet at all. There's no like boom in the airplane or anything like that, because now you are traveling faster than the speed of sound, so it's all behind you. I would say not enough, but I think we average about 2 to 3 flights a week. So we actually rely heavily on our simulators, which we'll get about maybe 2 to 3 of those a week in place of flying, or in addition to flying 1 or 2 flights. But we do try and get about 15 flight hours per month per pilot is kind of the initial goal, or the best goal. So we actually have a bunch of different mission sets, whether it is air to surface training, where we'll do close air support training, where there are Marines or soldiers on the ground that we are supporting them from the air. Just that, since we are a fighter, we do a lot of air-to-air combat stuff, kind of refine and hone our skills and our tactics, techniques, and procedures that we have to really just kind of get better at being fighter pilots, essentially. So couple other mission sets we have are armed reconnaissance. So basically just going out looking for targets on the ground that we have set up in the training areas is probably 98% of our job is just practicing. Fortunately, I have not been ejected from a plane. I do, however, know personally probably about 5 or 6 people that have. You know, if we're in the position where we're having to eject, then it's been a really bad day, and it's not necessarily something I want to experience. However, that being said, we do a lot of training to prepare us in the event if we have to eject, as it is an extremely violent event where you pull, I think in the first 0.05 seconds of ejection, it's something like 32 Gs. And then the next 0.1 seconds, it backs off to about 12 Gs, just to make sure it actually clears the aircraft. Your ears do pop. What we have is a technique called the Valsalva technique to help equalize the pressure in our ears. So if you actually pinch your nose and try and breathe air out through your nose, it will pressurize your ears and equalize the pressure as you're climbing and descending. So, and I've actually had my ears pop like the following morning if we're flying up high in 30,000 foot or 40,000 foot. Yes, so long as you put in the hours of studying and hard work. The one thing that I kind of didn't know going in was the amount of studying I would have to do, both initially and while, just from day to day now. So starting out flying in like initial flight training, you basically have to know the aircraft from front to back and know what a majority of the components do and how they can affect the performance of the aircraft should they fail. You can't just kind of stop and take a breath and try and necessarily figure out what's happening because you're still going however many 100 miles an hour. So you have to be able to think on your feet, be able to analyze situations correctly, apply the appropriate corrective reactions or the appropriate responses, and then bring that situation to a safe conclusion. So
if you're willing to work hard and continue learning and put the effort, anyone can be a fighter pilot if they really want to.
Absolutely. Yep.
Are there female fighter pilots?
There are. I know in the F-35 community in the Marine Corps, we have at least 3 right now, with I think 1 or 2 more that are in training. There will be more female fighter pilots in the Marine Corps at least. I know the Navy has a good number of female fighter pilots, in the Air Force as well. Obviously, I can't speak for the Air Force and the Navy because I don't know their numbers or anything, unfortunately, but they are there. One of the kind of functions of why we didn't see as many female fighter pilots previously was the ejection seat itself. If you weighed less than 136 pounds or more than 215 pounds and you were to eject, we could not guarantee that ejection seat would actually safe.
Do you have to have perfect vision to be a fighter pilot?
I know there used to be restrictions if you had, I think it was 20/50 or worse, but with the improvements in LASIK and PRK surgery, as long as you had up to 20/20 correctable, then people haven't had any issues coming in to be a pilot. I would tell a kid who wants to be a fighter pilot not to lose that desire, regardless of what anyone is telling them, because I had a number of people along the way say, no, there's no way you're going to be a fighter pilot. Like, your grades aren't good enough, or, you weren't in the right clubs in school, or you didn't do enough community service or something like that. And really just cement it in your mind and tell yourself every day that you are going to be a fighter pilot. Study, like I said, read aviation books, learn as much as you can about aviation, and just do everything you possibly can to put yourself in the best position to where when you apply or when you try to sign up or talk to someone, there's no way that they can't tell you that you're not going to be able to do it.